The room is quiet in a way it never used to be. The kids have built lives of their own. Old ambitions have either been achieved or quietly abandoned. The mirror reflects a face marked by time. But the real question isn't whether you've aged, it's whether you've grown. Many men cross 50 believing they're falling behind because they compare themselves to younger versions of success. More money, more strength, more attention. But life has a different scoreboard than youth. The qualities that truly define a meaningful second half often become visible only after decades of experience. There are 8 signs you're doing better than most men after 50. They aren't flashy. Few people congratulate you for them. Yet, psychology, relationship research, and decades of observing human behavior suggest these quiet victories are among the strongest predictors of long-term well-being. The first sign is surprisingly simple. 1. You no longer need to win every argument. When we're younger, disagreement often feels like a threat to identity. Being right becomes intertwined with being respected. But emotional maturity changes that equation. Researchers studying emotional regulation have consistently found that people who develop greater self-awareness become less reactive to conflict. They learn that protecting every opinion can cost far more than changing one. This doesn't mean you've become passive. It means you've become selective. You've discovered that not every misunderstanding deserves a battle. Some conversations are worth having. Others are simply expressions of another person's fears, expectations, or worldview. Ironically, this restraint often earns more respect than constant certainty. Confidence doesn't always speak louder. Sometimes it listens longer. Many men mistake calmness for weakness because modern culture often celebrates dominance over wisdom. But anthropology reminds us that in many traditional societies, older men gained influence not because they were the strongest, but because they had become the most emotionally stable during moments of tension. That shift is subtle, yet it changes marriages, friendships, relationships with adult children, and even the way you see yourself. And once a man stops proving his value through every disagreement, he creates space for something even more powerful to emerge. 2. Your circle is smaller, but your relationships are deeper. At some point, many men notice the guest list getting shorter, fewer phone calls, fewer invitations. At first, it can feel like loss, but often it's refinement. Social scientists have long observed that as people age, they become more intentional about where they invest emotional energy. The goal shifts from collecting acquaintances to protecting meaningful connections. You no longer measure friendship by frequency alone. You recognize the people who show up when life becomes complicated. The friend who calls after bad news, the brother who tells you the truth instead of what you want to hear, the partner who stays through difficult seasons. Depth quietly replaces quantity. 3. You recover from setbacks faster than you used to. Life after 50 rarely becomes easier. Illness, career changes, financial uncertainty, and family responsibilities don't disappear. Yet many resilient men notice something unexpected. They don't avoid hardship. They navigate it differently. Psychologists describe resilience not as the absence of pain, but as the ability to adapt without losing your sense of direction. Experience teaches lessons that optimism alone never could. You've survived disappointments that once felt permanent. You've learned that emotions arrive like weather systems. They can be intense, but they also move on. That perspective becomes a hidden advantage. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What's the next step?" The problem hasn't necessarily become smaller. You've become larger than the problem. Most people never notice this transformation because resilience is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It simply gets back up, one decision at a time. But that's only part of the story. Some of the greatest signs of progress have almost nothing to do with achievement, and everything to do with how a man values himself when no one else is watching. 4. You no longer build your identity around other people's approval. For much of life, it's easy to mistake applause for purpose. Promotions, compliments, status, and recognition can become quiet measures of self-worth. But after enough victories and enough disappointments, many men discover that external validation has an expiration date. Psychologists call this the shift from an external to an internal locus of evaluation. Instead of asking, "Do they approve of me?" you begin asking, "Am I living according to my values?" That question changes everything. You make decisions with less fear of criticism. You stop explaining every choice. You become more comfortable disappointing others when staying true to yourself requires it. What once felt selfish begins to reveal itself as emotional integrity. 5. You understand that peace is more valuable than constant excitement. Youth often chases intensity, more adventure, more achievement, more stimulation. But the nervous system wasn't designed to live in a permanent state of acceleration. Neuroscience suggests that chronic stress gradually reshapes both the brain and body. Over time, many men realize that the moments they treasure most aren't dramatic. They're deeply ordinary. A quiet morning before the world wakes up. Dinner with someone who truly knows you. A walk without checking your phone. The satisfaction of solving a problem without needing recognition. These moments rarely appear on social media, yet they become the foundation of a life that feels rich rather than merely busy. What most people don't realize is that contentment isn't the absence of ambition. It's the ability to enjoy the present without believing your happiness is always waiting somewhere in the future. And once a man discovers that kind of peace, success itself begins to take on a completely different meaning. 6. You spend your energy where it actually matters. One of the quietest forms of wisdom is learning that attention is a limited resource. Every unnecessary argument, every grudge, every attempt to control what cannot be controlled carries a cost. Behavioral scientists often describe decision fatigue as the gradual depletion of mental energy after repeated choices. Men who age well instinctively protect that energy. They simplify. They establish boundaries. They stop treating every request as an obligation. That doesn't make them indifferent. It makes them intentional. They understand that saying no to distractions is often the only way to say yes to the people and responsibilities that truly deserve them. 7. You measure success by the life you've built, not the image you project. There comes a point when appearances lose their power. The impressive title means little if you dread coming home. The expensive possessions feel hollow if they exist only to impress strangers. Over time, reality becomes more satisfying than performance. Sociologists have long noted that lasting fulfillment is tied less to public status than to meaningful roles, close relationships, and a sense of purpose. The men who understand this stop chasing symbols and begin investing in substance. Their confidence becomes quieter because it no longer depends on being seen. 8. Younger people seek your perspective, not just your experience. Experience alone comes with age. Wisdom has to be earned. When younger colleagues, friends, or even your own children begin asking what you think, not because you have authority, but because they trust your judgment, that's a remarkable achievement. It means you've become more than someone who has lived a long time. You've become someone who has learned from living. And that may be the clearest sign of all. A meaningful life isn't measured by how loudly your presence is felt, but by how deeply your character influences the people who cross your path. The final piece brings all 8 signs together in a way that completely changes how most men think about growing older. Growing older has never guaranteed becoming wiser, But if you recognized yourself in several of these signs, you may already be succeeding in ways that rarely make headlines. The strongest men after 50 aren't necessarily the wealthiest, the healthiest, or the most admired. More often, they're the ones who have learned to trade ego for perspective, reaction for composure, and constant striving for intentional living. Time changes every man. Character determines whether those years become a burden or an advantage. So the next time you wonder whether you're falling behind, ask a different question. Have I become someone my younger self could trust? The answer to that question reveals far more than any paycheck, title, or milestone ever could. If this perspective resonated with you, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your experience may be exactly what another man needs to hear. And if you enjoy thoughtful documentaries on psychology, relationships, and personal growth, subscribe and join us for the next conversation.